So now we're in the month of October and the EV tax credit is gone. A lot of analysts are predicting doom and gloom for the EV industry. They're saying that now that these tax credits are gone, EV sales are going to drop. There may be some truth to that. I can see EV sales dropping. Obviously, it was a huge incentive, but I think they are over-indexing how much these tax credits actually even factor into people's vehicle purchases. And one thing that they haven't discussed is how many people actually even knew about these credits in the first place. And first of all, very few vehicles even qualify for these tax credits. Very few. I'm going to go on the IRS website just to check. There's an energy.gov link that you can go to and it'll show you all the vehicles that qualified. Obviously, there's no Rivians on that list. The Teslas were on the list. Some GM vehicles were on the list, but most of these manufacturers, they didn't qualify. There was a lot of stipulations that they had to meet in order to qualify for that credit. And one of being that the vehicle had to have final assembly in the U.S. So a lot of vehicles didn't qualify. And there were restrictions as far as battery components, where they were coming from and things like that. So very few vehicles qualify for these tax credits. Very complicated. And then you had the limits that were placed on them. You had an $80,000 cap for SUVs and trucks and $50,000 for vehicles. And there's also an income limit that was attached to it, where previous to that change, there was no income limit. There was no limit on the cost of the vehicle, and you can get that $7,500 tax credit. So they were already watered down to begin with. And very few people are aware. Now, and the reason I say this is that I was always curious about this. I talk about electric vehicles all the time, and it kind of shocks me how few people who are even looking at electric vehicles, and these are people that actually are considering electric vehicles, know anything about the EV tax credit. They didn't even know it exists. And I was kind of curious about that, so I just looked at some data. But right here it says awareness of the EV tax credit has been low, while Axios ISPO's report from October 2023 indicated that 40% of Americans heard nothing at all about them or knew anything about them. An August 2025 survey found that only 4 in 10 Americans were familiar with the EV tax credit. So that means that 60% of the U.S. population didn't know about these things in the first place. And so if you didn't know they existed, how would that factor into your purchase decision? And so I need to understand if these analysts, how they factoring people's awareness into this situation, or are they not? And I listen to a lot of these analysts. I just don't think a lot of them know what they're talking about. I think they just listen to each other and they don't really do any critical research. So if 60% of Americans know little or nothing about the EV tax credit, how would that really impact their purchase decision? The bottom line is, if these things are affordable, people are going to purchase them. And GM has kind of proved that with the Equinox. Tesla's proved that with the Model Y. And for the people that did know the tax credit exists, they didn't understand how it worked. I would get a lot of comments in my comment section about the tax credits being a giveaway, and you're taking my tax dollars away from me and things like that, because I know how the tax code works. And, I kind of scratched my head. I didn't know if these people were serious or not. I believe a lot of people really don't understand the difference between a tax credit and a tax rebate. A tax credit is, you're just reducing your own tax burden. The individual that's receiving that EV tax credit actually had to pay into the tax system. So if you're getting $7,500 back, you had to pay at least $7,500 into the system to get your own money back. Now, tax rebate, that's different. You're getting money from the government. Whether or not you paid into taxes or not, you'll get money back. But the EV tax credit is a tax credit. It's that individual taxpayers' money that they paid to the U.S. Treasury. So if I paid $77,500 in taxes and I purchased the EV and it reduced my tax burden down to $70,000 that I paid, how is that taking money out of your pocket? Because it was me that made the money to pay that amount of taxes. How is that taking money out of your pocket? Someone please explain that to me in the comment section, because I never understood that logic. And perhaps, it's just simply that people just don't understand the U.S. tax code. It can be quite complicated. Credit and rebate, those things probably can be used interchangeably, but in this case, it's a difference. The long and short is that my belief is that come January, these EV sales are going to pick right back up as if they never left. And One of the big things is that Rivian introduction of the R2 is going to be huge. I go through the car lot, I look at all these different cars. You look at these SUVs, and I have one right here. I'm going to show it to you. If you can see that, that is a Mazda CX-9. If you look at these crossover SUVs, they all kind of have the same shape, kind of with the slow back. And some don't even look like crossovers. And like, in fact, when I first saw the Tesla Model Y, I did not think that was an SUV. If you ask the average person, is that an SUV? They're going to say, no, it's not an SUV. It doesn't look like an SUV. Even the IRS didn't think it was an SUV, but because when they first changed all these tax rules, they listed it as a car and it didn't qualify because it was over $50,000. But the R2 looks like an SUV, has that boxy style. And there are very few SUVs on the market that have that boxy look. And that is going to be the differentiator for Rivian. Anytime you're introducing a product to a market, especially a crowded market, you should have a very good differentiation strategy. And Rivian styling is what differentiates them from the other players in the space. It looks like an SUV. It looks rugged. It looks like you could take it off-road, which you can take it off-road. The other ones would be like Subarus, but those look more like station wagons, where the R2 just looks like a smaller version of the R1S. And so this is going to be huge. It's going to be an explosion. This is, in my opinion, going to be bigger than Model Y. Of course, it's all going to depend on how fast Rivian can scale. And when it does come out, you're going to see their sales spike. Now, with overall EV sales spike, I believe that EV sales are going to spike. With the administration that may appear to be anti-EV, may end up having the biggest EV explosion of them all. Because, in effect, by introducing politics to something that was already political, you, in effect, remove the politics from it. So now it just comes down to which one is the better performer, the gas car or the electric car. And that's what it's going to come down to now that politics has been removed from it. Plus all these charging stations are going in. The NEVI funding is back on. And I've seen maybe 3 new charging stations just recently. Matter of fact, I was just at one today talking to the electricians. They were doing some final installation things on one that's only like maybe 2 or 3 miles away from my house. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this? But I think EV sales are going to explode over the next 3 years. We're going to see that big growth. I believe it's going to cross well beyond the 10% mark. Around 2028, we may be around between 15 and 20% market share. More EV ownership is just going to generate even more EV ownership. And that's how it works. It's going to be like a snowball effect. And a lot of people are talking doom and gloom. I think this is the golden opportunity. This is where it happens. This is where all the growth is going to take place. Now, I already know we just saw Q3, a big explosion in EV sales. There may be a small drop in Q4. There are a lot of other variables that might slow growth, but that's going to be slow growth for the entire economy, not just electric vehicles. So I'll be curious to see what the overall car sales are. But my prediction is lots of EV growth. Even though these manufacturers are pulling back, certain ones, the smart ones won't, like GM, they're not pulling back. And Hyundai Kia Group, they won't pull back either. But Ford, and some of these other companies, I think they may miss the boat. I think they're going to miss the boat and they're going to be in a lot of trouble in a few years because they probably won't be able to catch up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think EV growth is going to explode or do you think it's going to slow down? And also, what do you think about that very few people even knew about these tax credits to begin with? Even as late as this year, still 60% of the people did not know anything about the EV tax credit. And the ones that do know, probably didn't really fully understand how they worked in the first place. But yeah, let me know in the comment section. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. But that's all I have for today. I'd like to thank you for joining me once again. And I can't wait to see you on the next video.